Okay, everyone, Tuesday morning. Apologies that there was no video yesterday. At the time of me recording, there really wasn't a great deal to talk about. I did look at some potential other topics that I could go into. Kind of felt like you wouldn't be in the mood for yet another squad depth appraisal. So just left it yesterday. Thankfully today there's a wee bit more to talk about, transfer stuff, etc. Yesterday we got the sad news that Lisbon Lion and Celtic legend John Clark had passed away at the age of 84. He initially joined Celtic from Larkhall Thistle at the age of 17 back in 1958. Took him maybe a couple of seasons to work in and become a mainstay, and he made his breakthrough in the 1960-61 season, taking over as what they called left half, which some of our older viewers might be able to correct me here if I'm wrong. I think is kind of left centre-back. He formed a strong partnership with Billy McNeill. Billy McNeill was basically the kind of aggressive aerial duel winner, and John Clark would sweep up in the background, something which earned him the nickname The Brush. They weren't very inventive in the 1960s. Like most of his teammates, Clark's best time at Celtic was under Jock Stein, most notably the 5 trophies, of course, that we won in 1966, 1967, and most famously that night in Lisbon. Clark, I think it's fair to say, was a pretty underrated player in that team. Maybe if you were kind of going through the players everyone remembers from the team, you'd be more likely to say McNeill for obvious reasons, or Jimmy Johnson. But Clark certainly maybe underrated at times, but certainly not underappreciated by anyone who was around at that stage. One of the first names on Jock Stein's team sheet around that time as well. And actually, interestingly, only he and Tommy Gemmell were ever present in that most famous season in Celtic history. In fact, Clark played 140 consecutive matches between April 1965 and September 1967. 140 consecutive matches, which is an incredible achievement. He then left Celtic for Greenock Morton, the only other kind of major club that he played for, if you could call Greenock Morton major. That was in 1971. I was actually reading that he played against Celtic for Morton and actually scored an own goal. So even though he'd left Celtic, he still scored for Celtic, which was kind of ironic because I don't think he was known for his goal scoring during his career. He then retired a couple of years later, ended up with 4 caps for Scotland as well, which seems a pretty low figure for a Lisbon Lion. I think, again, reading from what people have been saying, Scotland were just completely blessed for talent back then. One of those 4 caps, in fact, his first one did come in a famous 1-1 friendly draw against Brazil at Hampden in front of 75,000. John Clark was set the pretty difficult task of marking Pelé in that match. Not too many tougher tasks in the history of football. And he did an amazing job. Apparently, Pelé was pretty quiet that night. But it was with Celtic where I guess he felt most at home in his post-playing career. He couldn't stay away from the club. He rejoined in 1973 working with the youth team and reserve team. Then teamed up with his good pal from the pitch and off the pitch as well throughout both of their lives. Billy McNeill was Billy McNeill's assistant at Aberdeen, Billy McNeill's assistant at Celtic as well. John Clark actually managed, which is something I didn't realise, he had spells at Cowdenbeath, Stranraer and Clyde in the 1980s and early 1990s. Many people my age will know him as our iconic kit man for, I think, the best part of 20 years. He worked with the likes of Martin O'Neill, Gordon Strachan, Brendan Rodgers. I think it's incredible that a player from the most famous and best team in our club's history felt so strongly about helping the club in any way that he would become the kit man. And I was reading a really good piece from the journalist Hugh MacDonald. I'll link it in the description if I remember. And he was talking about the fact that John Clark was doing this kit man job like well beyond the normal year of retirement. Like he was working, I don't know, probably well into his 70s, I would think. Yeah, definitely. Doing this job and with such discipline as well, like the highest of standards. And I think he was a big figure still at the club as well, chatting to young players. I guess first team players would lean on him as well at times. Why wouldn't you? Someone who had achieved so much in the game and knew so much about Celtic. So yeah, an amazing figure and a great ambassador for the club as well. I always remember recently, and we keep talking about Billy McNeil. I think shortly after Billy McNeil's death, you might remember an athletic club in Bilbao awarded McNeil the One Club Man award, and sadly Billy McNeil had just passed away, and John Clark actually went along with Billy McNeil's daughter Susan to collect the award on his behalf. So yeah, just a great ambassador for the club. Quite simply, I think one of the club's greatest servants. In terms of the number of years he gave me, I was counting it earlier, probably like 50 years of his life he was working for Celtic in some sort of capacity, from player to assistant manager to youth coach to kit man to ambassador. Just an incredible guy. Lots of quotes going about to do with John Clark, lots of quotes from John Clark. I like this one. I never wanted any of that fame or celebrity. It wasn't me. I preferred being in the background. Okay, not quite sure how you go from talking about that to daft potential incomings and outgoings, but I guess we have to. This is me just last week. Spot on as ever. There's also been a bit of chat online. I've not paid too much attention to this, but I've seen some chat about Cameron Carter-Vickers potentially leaving, Nicolas Kuhn potentially leaving. I think is it RB Leipzig have been linked with Kuhn. Doesn't seem like there's anything really to be worried about at this stage. So yeah, not ideal. Don't worry, I've not purchased any Nicolas Kuhn season 25-26 mugs or anything like that. A wee throwback for some of the long-term 67 Hail viewers there. But yeah, it does seem potentially like the wheels are in motion for Nicolas Kuhn to move on. Mainly coming from Germany and the twice weekly. That means it comes out 2 times per week for any Rangers fans watching. Football magazine Kicker. They say that talks between Celtic and Leipzig have reached, quote, Neil Lennon air quotes, an advanced stage. Now, as always with these things, I try to find the original source so that we know exactly what is being said and who it has been said by. Couldn't actually find anything online from Kicker talking about talks being at an advanced stage. So I can only assume that it's been written in their most recent magazine edition, and then I think picked up by a number of different outlets, both in Scotland and Germany. So yeah, talks at an advanced stage. And I think when you add to what was said last week, was it, by a few Scottish outlets linking Leipzig, and now we're hearing more from the German side that Leipzig advanced negotiations. Yeah, sometimes you just get a feeling, don't you? And it seems, as I say, things could be happening here and could may well be on the way out to Leipzig, a club that he obviously played with previously. Also a club that he scored twice against last season. Also a club who don't even have a manager at the moment, but they clearly have enough in place at the club to still be looking for transfer targets. So yeah, how are we feeling about this? I've actually not really been online, not actually seen what the general feeling is here amongst the Celtic supporters. I don't know if what I'm going to say is going to be how most people feel, or if it's going to be controversial. My overall feeling is that this move might make sense for all parties. Clearly, Nicolas Kuhn probably wants to play at a higher level in terms of, a better league, and obviously the Bundesliga is stronger than the Scottish League. He, I think, will want to work into the national team plans with Germany. And again, I think playing with Leipzig I don't think it's controversial to say that would give him a much better platform playing in the Bundesliga right in front of their manager, who I think is still Nagelsmann. So that's fine from Nicolas Kuhn's point of view. Obviously Leipzig, if they get him, whatever. So what about Celtic point of view? I can see like both sides of the argument here, and that's not a cop-out from me. To be honest, it comes down to like, the question for me is, can we get Nicolas Kuhn back to the level that he was at for the first half of last season? And like, I actually don't know the answer to that. So I was thinking earlier, potentially a wee, extended break during the summer, which he's obviously getting at the moment. And, maybe he comes back revitalised, because he did that last season. You think about how quickly he started last season, right from pre-season with that Man City game all the way until like probably Christmas time. He was, sensational. And Champions League games seemed to bring the best out of him last season. Again, that could happen next season. And if you get Nicolas Kuhn back to that level, I think, we'd all want to keep him around. I mean, I think first half of last season, it's like one of the best wingers I've ever seen play for Celtic. I don't even think that's controversial to say. The level he was playing at, not just domestically, but in Europe. The worry was, and it is a worry, second half of last season, I thought he was really poor. And I know that the general feeling is that, it was like after that Bayern Munich tie that he faded badly for the rest of the season. My recollection is that it was actually a bit earlier than that. And I know he scored in Munich. I don't actually think he was brilliant that night in Munich. I remember being a bit frustrated in the first half. I think it was a good bit earlier in the season, possibly around the turn of the year. Maybe after Ibrox, when I think there was an incident. Did he get an elbow or there was no doubt. And a vicious Rangers player elbowed him in the face, took his lunch money and was just let away with it by the officials. But he didn't ever seem to reach any sort of real consistent level in the second half of the season. And you are, as a fan, questioning why that was the case. And the obvious thing to come to your mind when you're not talking about injuries or anything, I don't think injuries were an issue, is like, has he kind of checked out to an extent? Does he just think he's done his bit and is now looking for his next move? And again, I was trying to find comments, but I saw some people talking about some comments his agent had made about Celtic being a good stepping stone club for Nicolas Kuhn. I think that was when he was flying at the start of last season. And yeah, I can't help but have the sense that we might have had the best of what we're going to get from Nicolas Kuhn already. And as much as there's maybe a temptation to go back to the well and say to him, fire into the new season, let's get you back to that level, we can maybe get 25 million, maybe even 30 million, like people were talking when he was on fire last season. Maybe this move just makes a good bit of sense for Celtic. We paid 3 million to Rapid Vienna for him to get, 5 times that potentially, because they're talking about £15 million. Just 18 months down the line would be really good business for the club. Not quite at like the Matt O'Reilly levels, Kieran Tierney, Jota, etc. But that would be, incredible business, to be honest. And then you move him on and you bring in a new right winger who is guaranteed to be hungry, has a bit more of a guarantee. I don't feel like there's any guarantees with Nicolas Kuhn next season. He could be spectacular, but there is also another world, I think, where Nicolas Kuhn continues in the same vein as he finished last season. And then we're certainly not even having the conversations about 10 million this time next year. And I just think there's a lot of unknown with Nicolas Kuhn. So I think I'd take the money if it's offered. Thank him, wish him all the best, great memories, great financial reward for the club, great financial reward for him, I guess. And then we look at signing a new player. Potentially, that's Benji, the right winger that we're going to sign. I still think there's a bit of debate over his position. I've seen, and I saw loads of comments coming in last week, Hamish, he's a winger, he's not a midfielder. And yeah, I've looked online and he's described, I think, primarily as a winger. Doesn't look quick enough to me, I must say, right away to be a winger. He looks like a midfielder to me. I'm definitely going to find out more about him and where he's played with Nordsjælland and Sweden, and I'm going to get someone on to chat about him. But if he has the right wing option and we move Kuhn on and sign him for a fraction of the price, I think I'd be relatively happy with that. Oh, jeez. Sorry, I just saw West Brom are going to pay £3 million for Nat Phillips. Whew. In kind of similar dire 2023 centre-back news, Gustav Lagerbielke seems like he's heading back to us. He's been on loan at 20 in the Netherlands. He's posted a farewell to them and their fans on Instagram. It reads, Tuckers. That's 20's nickname. He's not just a fan of the thick of it. From the first day arriving in Enschede, I felt at home. Every day I drove to the training ground in Hengelo, I felt excitement. Every day I was around the team and the staff, I felt joy. Every day I put... Boring myself a little bit with this, so let's just leave the rest of that Instagram statement for now. Yeah, just the 3 years left on Gustav Lagerbielke's contract, so we'll see what the club do with that one. I do think we have a fair few players to be moved on in terms of centre-back. So Lagerbielke, Nawrocki, sadly, and Welsh as well. I don't know if there's anyone else, but I don't see a future for any of those three at the club. Finally, everyone, just a wee line from Mark Hendry and Seltzer here. He says that Celtic are, quote, ready to spend big this summer. It's understood that at least one significant outlay is expected. I was looking back at last season. Do you know how much Celtic actually paid in transfer fees? It'll probably surprise you to an extent. £40 million over the two transfer windows. I believe 30 million, just over 30 million of that was last summer alone. So assuming that we'll be in a similar position this year and ready to splash the cash. And you look at the players we're kind of close to signing so far. Tierney, free transfer. Benji, quite cheap. Even I know Osman's like a squad player, but he's pretty cheap. If we're going to sign any players from Japan, they're not going to be particularly expensive. The backup to Kieran Tierney at left back, we're not going to spend huge money on a second choice left back, I wouldn't think. So it does kind of have you questioning if Celtic are going to spend big money, which I think most of us think we will. Where are we going to do it? And you're kind of looking at the spine of the team, probably. I know left wing's there as well. But is it going to be on a first choice, first team striker who can transform us? Is it on a midfielder? Lennon Miller, perhaps? Is that ship sailed? I don't know. Could it be on a centre-back? I think it's interesting to ponder. And even just the number of players we're going to sign. I know as fans we get a bit fixated on that. But I remember the comments from Brendan Rodgers when he's talking about, I think he said 2 or 3 first-team players. I think that was excluding Kieran Tierney. Now, Benji's going to be one of them. And I know, as I say, Osman's a squad player, Doohan clearly a squad player. But you wonder, what other positions is he going to look at? It just feels like we're doing our business nice and early, as I've said. But that should hopefully give us time to add even more quality. And I still think the squad needs a fair bit of work, as I say. Centre-back, striker, centre-mid as well, potentially, would be the big positions. But yeah, Celtic ready to spend big money, and we're just to wait and find out who that will be on. But yeah, I'll leave you with that thought for today, and head off and back tomorrow. I can confidently say that.